Hello and welcome to the Believe in People podcast. My name is Matthew Butler and I'm your host, or as I like to say, your facilitator. Today I have with me B, a transgender woman, former Miss Transgender UK, and an activist for trans, neurodiverse and disability rights. For the first time, B publicly discusses her substance addiction and provides guidance to the community on how to interact with and help people living with Tourette's. First of all, this is normally the part of the podcast where I will ask my guests to introduce themselves, but I'm going to add a little caveat to that this time. Because I've heard you say in other introductions before that you are a tick box dream. So can you please elaborate that and then introduce yourself?
Ticking boxes. Normally you would look at something on a form or whatever, and you would look at ethnic minority, you would look at disability. There's sort of tick boxes, if you like, where companies or people will look at including BAME, including transgender, LGBTQ plus as a whole. They might look at a disability tick box to fill a quota. And I've always said, other than the fact that I'm white, which doesn't tick the BAME tick box, I literally fit every other box. I fit disability, hearing loss, neurodiversity, transgender. I literally tick every box. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if sometimes people see me and want to almost use me because I'm interesting or I fill a quota. Yeah. Or if I'm genuinely interesting and they want to learn from me. But that's why I say I pretty much tick every box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's so. There's a lot there, and this is I'm excited to unpick a lot of this with you because there's a lot of this that I want to learn about as well. So I completely get what you're saying about it during this, the tick box stream, because there is a lot here and there's a lot I want to learn about. But first, I guess a congratulations is in order because you're now 5 years clean.
Yeah. So Sunday, this last Sunday, I hit 5 years clean. Yeah. It's a bit of a weird journey with me in drug use because I only became B in 2004. I'm transgender and my pronouns are she, her. But my drug use started fairly young as a teen and it was on and off. It started recreationally. But it turned into something much more. I have always said no one that I'm aware of ever wakes up and says, I want to be a drug addict or I want to be an alcoholic. I've never heard that as a quote. I've never heard anybody say it, and no one wants to. Whether it's a mental or a physical dependency on whatever substance it is, whether it be alcohol or class A, class B, whatever you're talking about, no one wants to be addicted to something. I fell into a trap with drugs because not only were they readily available and around me, but I was undiagnosed neurodiverse. I didn't understand my own head. Now, I'm going to say a statement, and at first it might sound shocking, but I say to myself and others, in a way, drugs saved my life. Mm-hmm. Now, that sounds like a shocking statement, and it is, because Class A drugs don't save lives. It's quite simple, they don't. But back in the day, being autistic, ADHD, having an underlying tic disorder and having Tourette's, having something called Tourettic OCD, as well as suppressing being transgender and hiding who I was, desperate to escape, my head was a very messed up place. When I couldn't get a break from my head going round and round and round and round and round, it put me in some really, really, really dark places. And excessive alcohol and drug use was my only escape. That kind of sounds like I'm drugs positive, but I'm not. No. The way I'm saying it is because it's a cry for help, really. I'm saying it because these are the measures that some of us take to cope with life. It shouldn't be that way. If I started off life in the care system and then I was adopted, if social services and people around me had have recognised from a young age that I was autistic, recognised I had ADHD, diagnosed me and given me care, helped me understand my brain, helped me understand that difference is okay, then I wouldn't have had to block my brain out and I would have probably never taken a drug. Yeah. I know and I'm fully aware that the NHS and services are under so much pressure at the minute, but I truly believe that somewhere there must be something else that can be done. My drug use went from sort of like cocaine and all of those sorts of bits and pieces, taking pills. I've done a few other bits and pieces, but ultimately it wasn't about what drug I was taking. It was just about the block. It wouldn't matter if it was a bottle of vodka or some powder, as long as I could block things out. And it became moreish without me realising. Moreish to the point where it almost got dangerous. I remember very clearly, probably about 5 years and a few weeks ago to the date, pretty much, in the last week of before I got clean, I was sat at someone's house at a house party, and I had done a ridiculous amount of cocaine. And I looked at my watch, and my watch was giving me heart notifications. I was sat down doing nothing, and my heart was resting at 144 beats a minute. My head was, wow, I'm okay. You know, everything's blocked out, but that could have killed me. And the cost of trying to block things out of my head could have cost me my life. So I had a really funny relationship with drugs, and I also lived a secret life. I'd be around my friends and not telling them what I was on. If I was on a come down, I wouldn't be open about it. I'd just say I was feeling rough from something else. I'd always make an excuse, and there's not many people know about my past. And I just finally decided this year that it's time to just say, do you know what? I am a recovering addict, and I'm not going to be ashamed of it anymore. I'm going to be proud that I've turned my life around rather than being ashamed of what I was like.
Is there something that's caused you to think, right, I'm now going to be more open about my addiction than I have been previously? Because as you've said, it's not, I mean, this is the first time you've spoke openly about your addiction.
Yeah,
why now when you've been such an advocate for all these other things?
I think this was a hard one because my past involves things like high court enforcement, working on behalf of, working on magistrates' warrants and high court writs. It involves working on the doors. Back when I was presenting as male, I'm doing a lot of work. I'm a volunteer for a charity. I've just done 2 years doing crisis work. So being too open, I guess I've always felt a bit guarded around my career path, around judgment. Looking back now, had I have been more open about it, it might have made me more relatable, I guess. That I'm not going to hold judgment. If you're going through addiction right now, there's no judgment from me. I've been there, I've done it. If I say to you, you can do this, you can get clean, I'm not just saying it for the sake of it. I'm saying it with meaning because I know firsthand how hard it is. But that wasn't my train of thought. My train of thought was self-preservation, I guess. And I didn't quite know how to process it in a way. Very similar to why I suppressed being transgender. Thought processes behind it changed. There was a turning point. And I think in the last few weeks, something's changed. I don't know what. It just feels different. Maybe it's because I've hit the 5-year mark. It just feels like a bit of a
a milestone sort of thing. Yeah, time to, I get it. To be honest, you was talking about the relationship and that you had with substances and, you know, hanging around with your friends, and the one of the quotes that I've got here, you know, you spoke to my producer Robbie on the phone last week, and he's taken things from that conversation and given me some quotes, but you talked about substances giving you an escape and not realising that you was destroying yourself with alcohol and substances. I think the interesting thing is that not realising, because everyone around us, when we are taking drugs, when we are heavily drinking alcohol, they can see that. But as the individual taking those substances, we don't see that ourselves often until it's too late. I guess from an outside perspective, people might be looking at people with addictions and say, how can you not realise that you were destroying yourself?
That's a really good question. And a really good point. I guess when you're in that headspace, you don't see it. So it's this whole thing of self-perception, or there's this thing, I don't know what the exact wording is, but when you're in a situation, you don't necessarily see it the way other people from the outside do. Just the same as things like domestic violence and stuff, a lot of people are trapped. Other people can see it. When they're out of that relationship, they look back and go, whoa. But at the time, you don't see it because you feel it as normal. Yeah,
I was about to say that normalising of the,
It's a normalising behaviour. Yeah. And if I took some substances and I felt good, I wouldn't necessarily realise that my pupils are twice the size they normally are or whatever, because I'm that away from reality that I wouldn't recognise it. And to be honest, I think that was still at the time easier than facing reality, because I didn't find the acceptance I needed where I needed it. And life has changed so much since then that if life had been then what it is now, life would have been a different story. My past would have been so different.
So I've got another one here that says, you took substances because you was different. You didn't know you was trans. All around you was hatred. You ended up hating yourself for feeling like you did, trying to be someone that you were not, and that drove you to a dark place.
Yeah.
Tell me about all that hatred around you. What was that?
I grew up being told that gay people were faggots and they were dirty. I grew up also under Section 28, which was Margaret Thatcher's awful law that says schools and colleges can't, and it forbid any positive talk of LGBTQ. You could be as homophobic, because it was pre-Equality Act, homophobic and transphobic as you wanted to be, but it was illegal to talk about it positively from school. So it was a really tough thing to grow up knowing. I was kind of looking at boys and girls and thinking, well, I appreciate boys and men. You know, at my age, it was boys because I was a boy, or presented as one. But also I was looking at girls, but it was different because I was jealous of the girls. I was jealous of their long hairs. I'm stereotyping here, but it was what was in my head.
Course,
you know, I was jealous of the long hair and the conversations, and they had different uniform, and they played netball. I had to play football and rugby. It was really difficult to ever admit. And of course, I never knew what trans was. I didn't know you could be trans. I started life in care, and I magically was adopted and got parents. So maybe just like that was like a miracle, if you like. Maybe a miracle happened, and one day I'll wake up and I'll be a girl. And when you're a kid, you believe these things. And that's what I dreamt of, but I couldn't ever admit it to anybody because the hatred was normalised. It was always locker room school jokes, you know. It was normalised by something negative being, oh, that's gay.
Yeah.
And anything homophobic or transphobic was a slur in a negative way. So I couldn't become that. It was a kind of society put it in my head that it was wrong. But I knew deep down I was the wrongness, so I had to suppress it. There was no other choice but to suppress it.
Did you ever open up to your parents about any of this stuff?
Never.
No?
Never. I love my parents to pieces. They adopted me. They took me on. I owe them the world. But at the same time, we're very different people. They're very, very well-educated people that I have so much respect for, but I'm also very neurodiverse and different. And the feeling was always there as well that I gained these because I must have lost my original mum and dad. So what if I tell them I'm different in any way? Am I going to lose another set of parents? Because there's always that insecure level of insecurity when you've been through a system or been adopted or been under care of whoever. It can put a sense of insecurity in you. And I've grown up without realising it with a lot of abandonment issues and attachment issues. And I'm 34 and only just realising this and getting help for it, which is crazy. But when no one's helped you with it or told you or recognised it, how do you know? So it was really difficult to ever talk to them about being different because I was too scared of losing them.
I think talking about that, you were talking earlier about like the people not knowing about the neurodiversity. I think now there is more support and I suppose more awareness around things such as autism and ADHD than there ever was before, because one of the things that I hear an older generation say is, oh, you never had any of this autism or this ADHD when I was younger. It's like, it was there was just a complete lack of support for it. Do you think there is more support for these things now? Or do you think there's more awareness about these things now than there was before?
For definite awareness. Yeah. Because, I mean, if you rewind 70 years, for example, somebody with Tourette's or autism that presented fairly obviously, chances are he'd have been locked up and hidden from society, where now that's not the case. So that's changed massively. I mean, when you think about it, back then, it was only 50, 60 years ago, police were writing down the number plates of people outside LGBT bars. So society has changed loads for neurodiversity. We're getting there. We've still got a long way to go with a lot of it. I mean, like Tourette's has no nice guidelines, for example, which is crazy. We're fighting for them, but we shouldn't be having to fight for them. Autism and ADHD are definitely in places where they haven't been before. I definitely think we're getting there in a massive way. I still think we've got a bit to go, though, but we're definitely getting there.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience of living with Tourette's and how it has, I guess, affected your life?
Yeah, so I grew up with tics. It was kind of brushed under the carpet as movement disorders and other bits and pieces. They never really picked up that, hang on, this is tics, this could be Tourette's. I got into adulthood and my tics calmed right down, which they do for the majority of the community. Not all of the community, but most of the community. And I got through life, just the odd wink and, a few little bits and pieces. And a few years ago, I had some major trauma. And I started squeaking and shoulder shrugging. And within 2 or 3 weeks, words were coming out. That's really when it became blatantly obvious this could be Tourette's. 7 neurologists later, and 3 knockbacks, and I'm diagnosed. But it's changed everything. Things that I could do before I know how to think about. I mean, a classic really is this coming weekend. Me and my partner are going to Scotland for a few days for our anniversary. I've got little cards ready. So when we go onto the train, and I've got passenger assist to get my wheelchair up, etc., I give the cards to whoever's helping me and say, can you just do us a favour and put these on the table of every place in the carriage? And they say, someone on this carriage has Tourette syndrome, please do not be alarmed, etc. Because but you wouldn't have to think about that before. You wouldn't have to think about, can I go to the cinema? Am I too ticky? Can I risk going to bingo? Things like that. It changes a lot of things you don't think about. It changes. And everyone thinks about Tourette's as a swearing disease, and it's not. Only 1 in 10 of us have coprolalia.
Yeah.
Coprolalia is not actually about swearing. It's the use of inappropriate language that we can't control. I am that 1 in 10. But 9 out of 10 is motor tics and verbal. Verbal not being vocal, not being a word, but a squeak or a click or a sniff. But the physical side of Tourette's can be disabling and crippling. When your shoulder's shrugging non-stop and you can't stop it for days on end and it ends up bruising and muscle tension and pull tendons. When you can't sit still for an MRI scan and they can't do anything about it. There's when you're eating and you can't stop shaking or stabbing with your knife. There's so many things Tourette's affects that it changes. So many things we have to think about. Going to a steakhouse, we have to think about having a butter knife and not a steak knife at first because I get too stabby with them. Tourette's is a minefield that people don't understand. And the only awareness, well, most of the awareness side has been like through documentaries and stuff, but they haven't always been very well done.
No, because I think there's an element of it that it often comes across as, I guess, almost comedic in a way because of the things that you can say for having the tics. That I guess if you look at things like South Park, for example, there's an episode on Tourette's, and South Park is a comedy. So I think we often see those characters that have Tourette's in mainstream media as often the comedy character.
Yeah.
So, and that's partly because of, I mean, how do you feel? Because some of the things you say as part of your tics, they are quite funny to hear out loud.
Absolutely.
How do you feel when people will laugh at the things you say because of your tics? What's that like?
I've always said, from a personal angle, and I can't speak for the community because,
of course,
if you've met one person with Tourette's, you've met one person with Tourette's. You'll never meet two people with Tourette's the same, just like you won't meet two autistic people the same. But from my personal perspective is, laugh with me, but don't laugh at me.
Of course,
So if I'm ticking in a way that's dangerous or brutal and it's not funny, then don't laugh, because trust me, I've come out with some really brutal things that are not funny at all. In fact, I've gone home and cried over them because I don't want it to be a reflection on me or my thoughts, because it's not. Well, but if something is genuinely funny, then it'd be weird if people didn't laugh for me.
Yeah.
Because that lightens the mood. It means that they're not taking my tics as serious or for me, it's laugh with me, just don't laugh at me, is the thing. Because
when we met at the Hull Champions meeting at the beginning of the year, and I think what they was talking about baby swimming lessons.
Yes.
And one of your tics then was about drowning the baby.
Yeah, drown the baby.
Now, I know you're not thinking about drowning the baby.
No.
Of course not. And you had to apologise for that one. And like everybody sort of laughed at first, and afterwards, I don't think people was laughing, and it wasn't because it wasn't funny, but it was just obviously you can see that it was even you saying that was even uncomfortable for you to say as well, and I think everybody realised that pretty quickly. But it was funny towards the end of the meeting when you called the chair a pedo. Do you know that one I laughed at. So that was, I guess, again, you're the first person with Tourette's I've ever met. So in terms of my question, I was often thinking, when you have these tics, are you thinking these things? Like when the producers left the room and you told them to fuck off?
Yeah, no.
Was you actually thinking fuck off?
No, absolutely not.
So kind of tell me a little bit about that then.
Tics come, for me personally, we all get a slightly different build-up or a different urge. It can vary through the community. For me, if I try and hold a tic in, it's like electric running through my body, my muscles tense, and suppression is really difficult. But tics are triggered, and they're relatable, but the way I describe it is, it's not entirely the same. It's a very hard thing to describe. If you haven't experienced it, then I've always said, if someone was born completely blind, explain the colour blue to them. You can't do it.
Of course, yeah.
And so to explain the urge and how it happens to someone that hasn't experienced it is really difficult. But what I like to say is, we've all had intrusive thoughts. It doesn't matter who you are. You've walked down the street and at some point you've judged. You might not ever say it out loud, but you might be looking at something or someone and have a thought, but you would never say it. We all have a different part of our brain that we can't control. We breathe every day without thinking about it. Our brain controls that breathing. Our brain controls us blinking. We don't think about it. We just do it. There's so much we don't think about. And the brain is a powerful thing, a really powerful thing. So for those intrusive thoughts to sort of bypass the signals, if you like, and come straight out of your mouth, as much as a natural thing occurs, like a scream, if something happens to you, say you trap your finger in the door of the car, we can't suppress going ouch or whatever happens. It's as natural as that. You don't think about it, it just happens. It's literally like that. It's not necessarily a thought process. Occasionally it can be anxiety driven. Anxiety makes tics worse, tiredness makes, there's so many environmental factors that impact Tourette's. But it's also relatability. Anyone that looks like a social worker to me normally gets the pedo tic. That's what happens at Champions. The baby things, I'm glad people laughed because it took the edge off it. I don't know if you noticed, but halfway through that meeting as well, I punched my cup and it ended up in the middle of the room.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember that one.
I get really punchy with things and touchy. If it's there, my tics see it. But the urge is almost instantaneous. It's sort of urge, tic, gone. It's really quite quick. There's not much of a warning. Half the time I don't realise what I'm saying until it's already coming out my mouth. It's a very hard thing to describe, but I often don't know what I'm going to tic before it comes out.
I can imagine, there's certain situations where it does feel quite embarrassing to have those involuntary or social outbursts.
Absolutely.
So in terms of like racial or ethnic slurs, or in the company of like, I suppose the very people that'd be offended by such words. My producer here told me a story about yourself at Pride. Where tell me about this, because you have examples maybe that can better educate others. But I think he was at Pride with the microphone. And See, I don't want to say the word, but obviously,
so I'm on the Doncaster Pride Committee. And I am the only trans member on the committee, also the only disabled one. But we use that. We don't use it as a tick box. We use it as, look, we need to be trans inclusive. This is what we need to do from my angle. Accessibility, we don't look at a map and say, how's it going to work? We get to the location, stick me there, and they'll be, how does that work? I'll tell you how it works, or how it doesn't work. Hey, come guzzler. So I'm on stage.
That was a good one. I like that one.
Speaking about trans inclusion, we had a transphobic MP, blah. On stage, there were 20,000 people through the gates, and I'm halfway through my blurb, down the mic, and I literally just scream, faggots, out of nowhere. And thankfully, everyone had a pre-warning. I have Tourette's, anything could happen. But normally it's quite topical. Like, tics can be aimed. I see someone BAME, and I say 90% of the time a racial tic will come out, and I hate it because I was in foster care with black twins. We were fostered at the same time. I saw them as my brother and sister. I didn't see a difference in skin colour. We were just humans. So to get racial tics brutalises me. They're really difficult to deal with mentally for myself, let alone anybody that's on the receiving end of one, right? I never mean it.
Of course, and I think this is in terms of the awareness. If people
Can I stroke your beard?
If you want to. Can do, by all means. You can do. But I can imagine, Joe, when you said sometimes you can go home and you can cry about what you've said as part of these tics, I imagine the sort of racial slurs and things like that. They must be the harder ones, because obviously you don't want to make anyone feel that way. Of course not.
Yeah, it's horrible. It really is, like, really horrible.
I suppose what can people do to be more supportive and understanding of individuals with Tourette's then?
So the first thing is understand. Understand that it's a brutal condition that it's not something there to. We need to get rid of the locker room jokes.
Yeah.
It's not something that anyone would ever choose. If someone said to me now, I've got a cure for your Tourette's, would you get rid of it? I'd say no. Which is a really weird and bizarre thing because it's a condition that's disabling, it's tiring. It's well, my squeak really takes it out my throat. I 2, 3, 4 throat infections a year just from my squeak because the sorer my throat gets, the more the tickle pick on it and keep happening. But I wouldn't get rid of it because it's become part of me and who I am. Would I like to control it? Yes. But would I get rid of it? No. And there's a difference. The Tourette's, the community as a whole is so amazing. It's a community that I'm proud to be part of. And I've met some of the most incredible people through this community that are going to be there for life.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, be understanding. Don't judge us. Don't laugh at us. Laugh with us, but don't. If someone's there and they're quite obviously struggling because of neck jerking or twitching or whatever, that's not something to stand and laugh at.
No,
that's someone in distress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But people do pick on that.
Yeah.
Particularly people in school and college and whatever. People get bullied for Tourette's. And we need to get rid of that. We need to gain understanding and get rid of it. If you're an employer or a business, approach whatever charity is local to you. So for Hull and Yorkshire, it's TIC, which I volunteer for. TIC Yorkshire is our domain. And then nationally, there's Tourette's Action. In Scotland, there's Tourette's Scotland. In Manchester, Tourette's Manchester. There's organisations all over. Call us up, email us, book us in for training. Learn about our community. Learn about our condition. Learn about what you can do. Because it doesn't cost you anything but maybe an hour of your time.
Of course, yeah.
But to us as a community, we appreciate it so much. There's more people with Tourette's out there than people realise. And it's just finally starting to be known about rather than hidden like some dirty secret. But we need to get rid of the stigma. And a lot of the media hasn't helped. There's been some phenomenal documentaries from people like our Johnny Davison. John did John's Not Mad, and that was in the late 80s, early 90s. That was the first ever documentary on TV about Tourette's ever been seen. And he followed it up with I Swear I Can't Help It, and he's done a few others, and they were fantastic educational documentaries that were brilliant. But then more recently, there's been other documentaries that have been really damaging to our community because the producers have edited it in such a way to be shock value. That's not what we want. We're not about entertainment. We're about awareness. Yeah. And it's not fair on the individuals that took part in those documentaries that it was edited in such a way where it was used for shock value. So we just need really positive awareness that it's okay to have Tourette's. You're safe with us. Normalise. When I go to the pub with whoever, I have to take a cup with a lid and a straw on. And if I have a pint, they have to pour it into that because I'm that bad at punching glasses, as you saw. I'm that bad for punching things and tapping things. We need to normalise not staring at me because I've got a cup with a straw. Yeah. Simple things.
I've just remembered you actually shared a story about being asked to leave a pub not so long ago because of your Tourette's. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah. As a charity, we have adult night and we do things we wouldn't normally be able to do in a safe way. So we go to bingo. We've been bowling. People would laugh like bowling with Tourette's, a load of you triggering each other. But yeah, we can and yeah, we will. We wanted to do a pub quiz. Now, pub quiz with a few adults with Tourette's and a few of them with coprolalia. It's going to be funny, but also there could be people a bit about it in the pub. So we phoned a pub up out of courtesy, not because we had to, because we're a protected characteristic, but we phoned the pub and as a charity, and they say we won't have people like you in our pub. So, they blatantly refused us to even go, and all we did was phone them out of courtesy. Like, we're a group of adults with Tourette's. Can we come and join in pub quiz? And is it okay? Just so your bar staff can explain to the customers or whatever. And they wouldn't have us. We've now found a pub that embraces us and loves us. But
well, that's,
it shouldn't have been like that. That was mental. But yeah, that still happens. We do get turned away from places.
What do you think some of the, I guess, main misconceptions are then about Tourette's that you'd like to address?
The first is that it's not a swearing disease. 1 in 10 of us have coprolalia, so 9 in 10 don't. And even like me with coprolalia, that's the bit that you notice in the street.
Yeah.
But what you don't see is how many shoulder shrugs I've had a day and how much my shoulder's hurting and how it still keeps ticking. They don't see that, 12, 18 months ago, my winking was that hard. I was winking in my sleep. It was non-stop. And I turned up to my old job with what started to be a black eye because I've been winking for 3-4 days non-stop violently.
Wow.
And it wouldn't stop and it started to bruise. That's the reality of Tourette's. Tourette's is not kind. Tourette's is exhausting. And it's just a brutal, or can be a brutal condition. But just please take your time with us. Please try and understand us.
No, thank you. So to talk a little bit about transgender. So transgender is an umbrella term. In addition to trans men and trans women, it may also include people who are non-binary or genderqueer. So I've got a little bit of a read out here that my producer's given me. So a few facts here. But according to a 2018 survey conducted by the charity Stonewall, almost half of transgender people under the age of 26 said they had attempted suicide, while 84% said they had thought about it. This highlights the significant mental health challenges faced by transgender individuals and the need for better support and resources to address these issues. How do you think society can become more accepting and more inclusive of transgender individuals?
Wow.
It's a lot, that one, isn't it? I can appreciate
it's
that.
It's a big question, which... where do I start?
That's it.
So, I mean, like, my personal journey of coming out wasn't easy. In a lot of ways, I come out all the time. Every time someone misgenders me and I correct them, it's almost like coming out again and again and again. That's why I always start, whenever I introduce myself as a meeting, I'm B, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm trans female. Because I just need to. Then people around me have got no excuse to get it wrong. But there's so much hate around trans. My gender is not political, but it's become political, and that's the problem. It should never have become political because how I live my life has got nothing to do with anybody else. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just living authentically. So I'm too fat for a vag. Really, what I want the people to know is don't believe everything you hear in the media. People are fast to jump on things. And the hate that is out there is unbelievable. So there's a big debate around trans women, and you normally see in the media, if anyone's going to make a comment about transgender, it's trans women. Trans men aren't really a threat to anybody. But trans women are. Just because less than 1% of trans people detransition, and there might be one trans person or person that claims to be trans that's done sort of violent assault or something, doesn't mean we're all like that. But they're the things that hit the media. I'm on blockers, a lot of blockers, and none of my parts work, if you like. So I'm at no threat to anyone. I mean, I go in the disabled now, I have to, but pre-being in a wheelchair, I'll go in the women's. And there's a lot of controversy around, should I be in the women's when I'm pre-op, if you like? Well, why not? I'm just there to do what everyone else is doing, which is go to the bathroom. if anyone, the trans people are the ones at risk, because I go in there on my own, but there might be 5 or 6 or 7 people don't like that. The trans people are the vulnerable ones a lot of the time, and that gets overlooked because the media makes us out to be a threat. The government start arguing about, are we a threat? Well, how about the threat on us? You just read out the suicide rates and the attempt suicide rates.
Yeah.
Is there any wonder that trans people have so many mental health problems and depression? Because the way society's pressures are on us. Anybody does anything in the media around transgender and all of the haters jump on it, like in a really big way. And that makes it really difficult for us being trans. All we want to do is live our lives.
I think there's this battle, isn't there, when people try to raise awareness about certain subjects, there's another percentage of people that suddenly think their way of life is being, or you know, it's like a way of life is going to be imposed on them, or they're suddenly feeling threatened. And I think the one thing I've learned over the years, the media will always find someone to vilify. And I think in terms of like our line of work, we've talked about Benefits Britain and how, you know, people will try and make out that those people who are on universal credit are somehow the ones ruining the entire society. That the media always have to vilify someone. And I do think right now, especially over the past, I mean, what I've seen on Good Morning Britain and stuff over the past year, like you said, trans definitely is the topic. But I guess one of the things that really interested me when I spoke to Andy Train on this podcast was he said that the trans community is around 20 years behind where the lesbian and gay community were. So a lot of the hate that trans people are getting now is the same as what those who are lesbian and gay was getting in like the 80s and 90s. So he feels like in 20 years' time from now, the trans way of life will be a much more accepted way of life than where it is now. What do you think to that sort of 20 years behind statement?
I'm definitely with that statement all the way. We are definitely behind. Way behind. And partly it's because if you look at when same-sex marriage came in, then you look at the date of the Gender Recognition Act. The Gender Recognition Act was 2004. It's really recent where we became legal to be us effectively. Although the Equality Act protects us, the Gender Recognition Act allowed us to be us, like legally change our gender. So it is quite new in a way, but we've always been there. It's just that people didn't know about it. The hard thing, I think, as well, what's made things in a way harder for the trans community is 20 years ago, Facebook and Twitter weren't what they are now, or even, I don't know when they came out, but, you know, like social media has evolved so much that people have a very easy platform to not only do awareness, but have opinions and push hate. You don't have to go out and push it face to face anymore. You can sit at home on your phone or on the bus or wherever and push hate. And I think the digital world, the misinformation, everything about it is different now. Very different to how it was. In a lot of positive ways, but also in a lot of negative ways. And I've had to, in my past, justify me being a woman. Say, well, someone literally asked me after doing trans awareness training for them, how do you see yourself as a woman when you can't give birth to a child? And it really took me back. It's like, whoa, right, hang on a minute. And it made me think of how to describe the phrase woman. Now, when this goes out, I know people might disagree with this and it might be an unpopular opinion. But to me, woman is almost an umbrella term. Now, I'm not taking away from a woman being a woman, and I'm not saying women's rights are at risk here, because everybody needs rights, equal rights. We need personal rights. We need every right we can have. But what defines woman? Because if you have short hair or long hair, does that make you more or less woman? Well, to me, it doesn't. If you have a deep voice or a higher pitched voice, does it make you more or less woman? I don't think so. If you're tall or short, does it make you more or less woman? Because you get tall women, you get short women, just like you get tall men and short men. if you can birth a child, does it make you more or less woman? Because my mum couldn't have kids. That's why she adopted me. She's still a woman. So just because of certain body functions shouldn't define who you are. And that's where I really struggle with people that are so anti-trans women. I don't understand the mindset. I'm living as me and you're living as you. If I identify as a woman, which I am, then they might say, well, what's down your pants? Well, sorry, but it's got nothing to do with you. I'm not asking you any personal questions about your life.
So that's the thing. You're suddenly open to all these really personal questions, aren't you?
You are.
People, that's it. People are like, well, what about this? What about this?
What about this? What about that? Well, it's like, well, actually, if you took my blood right now, you get estrogen, you wouldn't get testosterone. So what do you see? You see woman. If you look at my top half, I'm naturally grown. I'm on HRT and I've grown my own boobs. But even if I was flat-chested, it wouldn't matter because, again, well, how do you define woman? Yeah. And I'll open it and I'll quiz people till the head's like overwhelmed in a way. But women's rights, the reality is that 98% of domestic violence is man versus woman. Yeah. And we know that sexism is still there, and there is not many women you could ever meet in life that wouldn't have had a sexist comment made or whatever. Women have had to fight for rights, and I completely respect the fight women have had, but also trans, we've got to fight for our rights. The LG and B have had to fight for their rights. Now the T is fighting for ours. So why can't we just all fight together for equality and just get on with it? Why does it have to be a hate and divide? So
in terms of the hate and the divide, the one thing that I have seen doing the rounds online is, I guess, people trying to trip up celebrities, political figures with the question, what is a woman?
Yes.
And then depending on their answer, jumping on them as being transphobic.
Yeah.
What is it, if someone said to you, what is a woman then? How would you answer that question? Is it a straightforward answer?
No. I don't think so.
No.
Because you can't talk about chromosomes definitively because you've got the intersex community. There's so much more than just a definition. It's kind of one of those where I identify as a woman. I'm making physical changes to be a woman. I one day will be complete as a woman, but I know I'm definitely not a man. It is a really hard question because a lot of people will say, no, it's not. You're either a man or you're a woman. It's what's down your pants. Well, no, that's sex, and sex and gender are different. Sex is how you're assigned at birth and there's all sorts of bits and pieces with it. But to me, it's who you are as a person. It's how you present to the world. It's how you feel in the morning when you get up. And there's just so much more to being a woman than what's down your pants or whatever. And it's just you as a person. Now, granted, we need protection methods to a degree because we don't want people just saying, oh, I'm going to call myself a woman and access women's spaces. That's not what it's about. But it's a massive debate and it's a massive topic. But to me, if someone said, what is a woman and what makes a man, it's how that person identifies, presents, lives, embraces life, what their mindset's like.
Yeah. It's not simple. It's not simple. It's not. No. But it's interesting when you talk about the divide politics. Why people are trying to trip people up and and again, I think there's just so much polarizing sense of just hate and separation and putting people into individual boxes. When, like you said, you're just trying to live your life.
Yeah, I'm just trying to live my life.
Just trying to live your life.
That's all I'm trying to do.
And it's often, but I often find this comes from external factors. It's people not even in that community trying to trip other people up in order to create a divide then within a community. So there's people going on, obviously you would have seen the stuff with J.K. Rowling.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that comes from external, people not involved in that community, giving her hate and then feeding her with information, which then comes out as hate, which is then retaliated and replied to by the LGBTQ plus community. And it's just this circle of hate, but with outside influence. And I just think it's bizarre.
It is. And I hate the politics and the warfare behind it. Like, just let us be us. I want to just live as me, without hate and without judgment, without seeing trans rights on front page news all the time. I just want to be me and go to Pride every year and celebrate how far we've come, that I can live as me. I'm not in a country where I'll be stoned to death for being me or imprisoned. I can be me freely, and I'm proud to be able to be me, and I'm proud that I didn't come out. I'm proud I'm living as me and not trapped, and I'm proud of the community I'm part of. That's all I want to be able to do, but somewhere down the line we have to keep fighting because there's so many fights to have.
Absolutely. And on a more positive note, you won Miss Transgender 2017.
I did.
Which we have our little awards in front of these. So these pageants also serve as a platform to raise awareness about the issues affecting the transgender community and promote acceptance and understanding. So how did you first get involved in the Miss Transgender UK pageant, and what was that experience like for you?
I kind of got there by accident. I had a good few friends that were models, and I took a friend to a modelling shoot, and she just said, "Why don't you model as well?" And I'm like, "Stop being stupid." She said, "Seriously, it's a charity, dude." Just go. So I did, and I quite enjoyed it. So I carried on, and then I was looking because I found a lot of transphobic photographers. I was doing these sort of charity shoots where models would pay however much, 10, 15 quid to go. Photographers would pay 20 quid to go, and we all take it in turns, you know, different bits of locations. And it makes a bit of money for charity. Brilliant. Photographers get a few bits of their portfolio. We get a few pictures for us, and charity's made money. But I started gaining confidence from it. So I started chicken. I started gaining confidence, wank, in a way that I was looking back at myself going, wow, a bit of makeup and nice clothes, I really do look like a woman and feel like a woman, rather than being stuck in this world where I'm being misgendered all the time and whatever. So it was kind of an escape from reality for me. And I was just looking around at trans modelling to try and avoid the transphobic photographers that refused to work with me, or they would work with me and never send me the pictures and block me. Because they didn't want to appear transphobic. So I stumbled across Miss Transgender UK, and I was like, oh, okay. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, it's an application form. I'll send it. So what? And then a few months, I didn't have anything back. And a few months later, I get this, well, send us some pictures, do this, do that. So I did all the things. And then I just found myself in the final, which I did never expect. It was crazy. So I suddenly found myself needing to do a project for charity, get sponsors, get a dress, get my wings made, get all these bits and pieces made because I was going to the finals. I was like, wow. So I went to the finals, not ever thinking I would win, because for me, I didn't even think I'd get to the finals, let alone anywhere else. Just to be in the finals was incredible.
Of course, yeah.
I did my speech and did my bits and pieces, had some support from some old friends that came down to Brighton to see me. And then I won the whole thing, which was insane. I mean, really insane. Yeah. Because it's the last thing I expected.
Of course, yeah.
That really launched me into this world I'd never experienced of news feeds wanting me, newspapers calling me, wanting an interview. But it was a year that it made me, but it's a year that also nearly killed me.
Why?
It put me in a position where 1 minute I'd be on BBC TV or ITV, whatever, Sky News, whoever it was, would be interviewing me. And it was fantastic. I'd get a voice and I'd get a platform to get things out there. But then at night, I was alone. Okay, I was in a hotel room or whatever, dealing with an undiagnosed neurodiverse brain, really struggling. But then it also put me in a position where I was socialising with different people to what I'd normally socialise with. What that came with was drugs.
Okay, yeah.
It was very easy for me to go out after an interview with my crown and my sash on, mix with a load of people, trying to come to toilets and just have a quick line or whatever. And it spiraled this journey because, as I was saying earlier about drugs being a way of blocking things out, it was too easy. And years and years of being on and off substances, that was probably my worst year on substances I've ever had in my life. The pressures of the media, seeing the hate that was on the media. If you're in the media for something different, never read the comments. It's true, because they will drill you into the ground. Awful comments like people telling me to go and commit suicide. People saying that I'm a man in a dress and I should never be allowed out. And LBC Radio chewed me up. I was in the Express, didn't know I was in the Express, but the Express did a piece on me and they found my dead name and they outed it. And then LBC Radio picked it up and everyone's like, but you've been on LBC Radio as well, have I? They've been reading your thing out. And they made comments saying if this is what a beauty queen looks like, then standards have dropped something terrible and this isn't a beauty queen. It's like, well, Miss Transgender UK never was a beauty contest.
No.
It was about raising a platform for a minority community. So they got the facts completely wrong, but it doesn't stop that on breakfast morning radio, that was read out and that was about me and there's no way of replying to it or responding to it. It was really difficult. The media put me in a really dark place. As much as they did a lot of good for me, they also put me in a very dark place. It was a very double-edged sword.
I think even though it's been, 2017, 6 years, I can't imagine that necessarily being said now, though. I think people would be a lot more careful with possibly. This is just my personal opinion. I don't think mainstream media would necessarily push that hate as much today as they did 6 years ago. Do you think that there has been a change in mainstream media in the way that they push that, I guess, narrative?
I would hope so.
There's a big be kind thing now, isn't there? I think in mainstream media,
there is.
I think they're very careful not to. Well, what the comments you just said, that's bullying, isn't it? I don't think you'd necessarily see that.
No,
I think the past I just think the past couple of years there's been a massive change in that. But I guess how do you think of that?
The way I feel is COVID made an impact on everybody, where people that have never suffered mental health conditions before suddenly found themselves anxiety and depression or whatever. We had this massive push of awareness of mental health and isolation and pushed like almost be kind narrative where nurses are our heroes and teachers need recognising, that was amazing. Cleaners became heroes instead of looked down on, if you like.
Absolutely,
and that was incredible. But I think for me in the media, Caroline Flack changed a lot.
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
I do think the death of Caroline Flack changed so much in terms of that media and the bullying and basically that entire narrative.
Well, if you look at how the public responded to Phil and Holly, at the Queen's coffin, where David Beckham waited in the queue, but they apparently queue skipped. What went through my head was, if they have queue skipped, they've kept people going through lockdown by 6 o'clock in the morning or whenever they get up, being on the telly, doing their routine, so people sat at home isolated still have Phil and Holly to watch.
Yeah.
They've never given up trying to keep people's spirits up. If they were filming for their breakfast TV show and in between filming and getting up the next morning to film again, they've queue skipped. If they waited in a queue for 12 hours, they wouldn't have been able to do their job and keep people's routine in the morning.
That's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
I saw a different side. That might not have been the case.
No, but it's an interesting look at it. I ain't seen that argument for that situation yet, but now you saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's a good point.
That's what I feel. And also, with Phil coming out, the amount of hatred he got from comments online for coming out as gay was horrific. So Phil almost had it double whammy. But this is after Caroline Flack. And I think I saw so many people mentioning Caroline Flack that I think it's there in people's heads that we need to be kinder, because so what if they skipped a queue?
Yeah.
Tell me who hasn't at some point in their life skipped a queue. You know,
I found the be kind narrative to be really, I guess there's a preference, isn't there, when people want to be canned. People pick and choose when they want to be canned, like because that's all. I do find that it's someone once said be canned, but only if you agree with everything else that I believe and say, and that's down to a lot of people's personal opinions, both left wing and right wing views. That's kind of an underlying narrative that you see there. I guess. Talking about social media a little bit there, can you talk about your views on the role of social media in shaping public perception of transgender individuals and the pros and cons of this platform for activism and advocacy? So you've said about the comment section. That can be, the comment section to just about anything can be absolutely brutal. It's very rare that I think you'll ever come across a 100% positive comment section on social media. But I guess in some way that social media can also bring people who do feel ostracised or segregated from other communities into, I guess,
spunk bubble.
I like that one. Being into more welcome communities.
So yeah, with social media, it's been a godsend to many.
Yeah.
The way I found Tick, the charity, was stumbling across a Facebook group. Now I'm part of that charity, volunteering, and they've saved me. When I lost my job because of health, they picked me up so I wasn't at home 7 days a week.
Yeah.
They've believed in me to keep going. And so social media's done the same for trans or for me personally in LGBTQ+, because when I'm sat at home and I'm alone, although there's hate and right-wing groups out there, and there is hate groups on Facebook that are anti-trans, that politically go after us, as much as there is hate, there is also love. Every time I see if someone share a Facebook post saying, my social media page is a trans-friendly zone. If you don't like it, feel free to leave. I think to myself, there's love out there. There's still love and people proud to say they're allies. And every time someone sends me an email and it's got their pronouns underneath their name, even if they're not part of the community, it makes me feel so warm and included and happy, because saying my pronouns are she, her, or he, him, or whatever they are. Well, that means that you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it to show that you're safe. It's a very discreet way of saying I'm safe. And I really love that inclusivity.
I've never thought about that before. We do a lot with our work, and I think it for me. I often think, well, you see the name Matthew Butler, and you're going to see that name and just think man. So I haven't got the pronouns in man, but when I see emails from someone called like Sam, and it has he, him, she, her, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because I wouldn't necessarily know. But what you've just said then about it creating like that safe, it's a safe space. I didn't think of it like that before, so I'm probably going to add it to my emails now that that's been said. So yeah, I'm quite glad you've said that.
I have my pronouns on my ID card for Tick, and I have them on my emails. Our CEO, she added her pronouns on her emails, and it just makes me feel so inclusive. You go to many companies now. My partner, on her name badge where she works, it says Donna, she, her. And she chose to have her pronouns on a name badge.
Yeah.
It's just so incredibly inclusive, but at what cost to anyone? It doesn't cost anything.
No.
And if you ever get a transphobe that says, oh, those snowflakes, well, actually, I'm saying my pronouns or asking your pronouns because you might be a doctor or a reverend. You might not be a he, him, or a she, her. Yeah. There's always a get out. I've always got clever ways of getting around the transphobes. And I just love sharing them so people can be more inclusive.
So actually, going to we're talking about, you talked earlier about growing up. I want to talk about, what was it like growing up in a body that didn't match your gender identity? And how did you cope with that? Because I remember, do you know what, there was a radio host,
Stephanie.
Yes, with Capital, was it Capital FM? And when I read that story, I was like, that makes sense to say she felt like a woman trapped in a man's body. And that was my first introduction to the trans community. So I think I would have been about 16, 17. We're going back a few years here. What was it like for you growing up in a body that didn't match your gender identity?
Living hell.
Yeah.
I go to bed at night wondering and thinking about how I could cut off what was downstairs. I attempted it a few times. I wanted to. A lot of the times, the only way I thought that I could fix things was ending everything. it's really tough because you're looking at a society that you don't think will accept you, which a lot of the time, unfortunately, that's true. And you're in a body that doesn't define who you are. You are physically something that you're not. Everyone hates, or most people hate something about themselves. It doesn't matter if it's their weight, which is probably the most common, or their height, or their nose shape, or there's something, a mole. There's always something people don't like about themselves. They can live with it. But when it's your entire existence, that changes everything. I've hated my voice, hated my body parts, hated my structure of how my skeleton is, my wider shoulders. I've hated my name. I've hated how people call me he, him. I've hated how I was pushed into gender-specific sports. So I was made to play football and rugby while the girls did netball and hockey. I've just hated every single living, breathing thing about being male. Despised it. And it wasn't who I was. And I got to the point when I came out, it was end it or come out. And if I couldn't come out, I was going to end it. And I said to myself, what's the worst thing that can happen if I come out? If I lose everything, which I pretty much did, but if I lose everything, I can still end it after. So let's just give it a try. And then the feeling of, although I got a lot of hate and rejection, the feeling of the freedom I had, the warmth, the fulfillment of being me, it was probably the first time I felt alive in my whole life.
How old was you when you came out?
24.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's not late as such, is it? But I think, I mean, I guess a lot of my friends that are, in the community came out as teenagers, I suppose.
Yeah.
What was it like then? Because you said you felt like you lost everything. Did you lose as much as you thought you was going to? Because obviously, are your parents still in your life? And I think you said that your parents are still there, aren't they?
Yeah, we had a rocky patch. And
okay, yeah.
A very rocky patch. I lost some of my family.
Yeah.
Some of my birth family and my adopted family. Lost a lot of friends. Lost my job. Believe it or not, I was oofed out my job, yeah.
I didn't think they could do like that.
The law says they can't.
Okay, just did it anyway.
But they find ways.
Yeah, I guess they always
fabricating things. And
yeah.
It's horrible. And when I went to my next job, I decided to keep growing my hair and live a split life. So I was living as female outside work, but living as male inside work. There was probably upwards of 100 employees, and I ended up being a supervisor. I was on social media, but under a different name. Not under my dead name, not under my name now. I was kind of toying with names at the time, but I didn't think anyone would find me. Someone did find me on social media. They thought I was in their words, cross-dresser. Screenshot my social media and emailed it to everybody saying, look at this person, look what they are. And
I just can't imagine why anyone cares so much. I guess that's always my thing with these sort of topics is why do people have so much time and energy into caring what other people do? It's like anti-gay rallies, and how have you got the time? Why do you care so much? You've got a day free in your week, and you want to spend that time spewing hate. I'd love to have a day free to do something for me. Do you know? Yeah, people have got that time, and that's what they choose to do with it. And I just can't understand why people put so much of their own energy into something so negative. How it does not affect them in the slightest.
I don't understand it. I said in my TED Talk, which you watched, I made a point about neurodiversity and difference making a stronger team. If you've got 10 people that are all, I don't know, this is going to sound very stereotypical, but there's a point behind it. If you've got 10 right-wing thinkers, straight white males in a room, and then you've got another room, and and you've got a mix of races, you've got a mix of neurodiversity and neurotypical, you've got a mix of genders, you've got a mix of disability, as all bits and pieces, and you've got the same projects to do, you're going to achieve those results very differently. I can almost put money on it that the group of neurodiversity and mixed genders and everything else will come out with a more creative solution. And I think that's not box ticking. That's life. That's about creative difference in thinking. Where this hate comes from for us minority communities, I don't know. I don't understand why people find the energy and the passion to hate on a minority community that's already under pressure and scrutiny.
That's it, isn't it?
When put your hate into hating on paedophiles, murderers. Put your hate into people that deserve hate, that have made conscious bad decisions that have harmed another individual. That's where you should be putting your energy. You don't need you put your energy into helping aid Ukraine and people suffering, or Turkey and the earthquakes. Put your energy into helping. Don't put your energy into hating a minority community that's not bringing hate on you or harm to you, because there's no point. I don't understand where this negative passion comes from, but all I do know is love will always win. Because every year I will be in a pride parade at Doncaster, Hull, or wherever I am, shouting, screaming, whistling, whatever I need to be doing, saying I'm here and I'm not moving. And I'm proud of being here. And no amount of hate is ever going to stop our community doing that.
What advice would you give to someone struggling with their gender, their identity, or their sexuality?
What I'd say to you is, it can be a very dark place. There are some families that, for whatever reason, have very much beliefs against LGBTQ+. If you're in one of those and there is a way out, there is safety, there is a community waiting for you to embrace you. It's okay to live and be your authentic self. Just always remember to keep yourself safe. It's all very well and good, people shouting and screaming, be you and don't be unapologetically you. But we have to understand that some people's circumstances do not allow them to come out with all the colours straight away. Just make sure you're safe. Reach out to people. Reach out to people in a safe way. It's okay to be you. Don't let anybody stop you being you. And make sure you know that there's a life ahead of you. Don't end your life because you think you can't be you now, because you always can be in the future. It took me 24 years till I became me. But now I've got my life ahead of me. And now I'm living instead of existing and surviving. And there's a big difference. But if you need to live and survive for a few years before you come out and live, then that's also okay. There's no right or wrong time to come out. There's no right or wrong way to come out. You've got to do it your way and for you in your time.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about... So we'll talk a little bit about obviously, you've mentioned being in a wheelchair. You've mentioned disability. Can you tell us a bit about your experience with F&D and being in a wheelchair, and how has that affected your daily life?
Well, at first I was dead against getting a wheelchair. It started off with what we call drop ticks, where your legs give way and you drop to the floor. It's part of Tourette's. It can also be seen as a functional tic, which is a tic that affects function of your body. My knees were getting bruised to the point that they were scabby, and then I was dropping on bruised, scabby knees. It was hell. But I was dropping to the point where I broke my coccyx. Okay. Yeah, this is the level of how violent it was. People around me that were supporting me were saying, B, you need a wheelchair, and I was dead against it. But I gave in.
Why was you against it?
I've always been quite independent. So pre-COVID, I did my first triathlon. I did my first triathlon.
That's impressive. I couldn't imagine doing any. I couldn't imagine doing the sprint, never mind the rest of it. But yeah,
I did my first triathlon on a broken ankle.
Wow,
the full thing. I went with a broken ankle and did it. The pain was next level.
Of course, yeah.
But I was doing it. It was on my bucket list, and I was finishing. And I've always been quite a independent person. So to put myself in a box, if you like, mentally, of becoming vulnerable, because although I don't look at other people being vulnerable, to me it felt vulnerable to be lower than everybody else, to be defenseless, because I've been assaulted quite a few times since coming out as being transgender. It was the whole mindset of being lower and thinking about, but I don't know, there was just some stigma in my head around me being in a chair. And that was mentally hard to get over, from triathlon to wheelchair. Yeah, particularly when my legs were still working at the time. Why do I need to be in a chair if my legs work? That was hard. So I really struggled to accept it. But then once I got my first chair, this is my third chair. But once I got my first chair and I was in it, I realised that, oh my God, I'm safe. Because at one point, me and my partner were going through Asda and I dropped. And two of staff come over, do you need a first aider? Is everything okay? The panic of it made things worse. So at least no one was staring. There was no danger there anymore. But then the FND started kicking in. Now, FND stands for functional neurological disorder. It's a software problem in the brain. My spine is perfectly fine. I have no spinal cord injury. My legs are fine. They're good. But most of the time they don't work. When I say don't work, you could put a needle down my legs and I wouldn't feel it don't work. That's how much they don't work. It's a software glitch in the brain where it forgets where things are, if you like. FND can cause multiple different things. But for me, it was my legs. It was almost like my brain saying, your legs are dropping, you're causing harm, we're going to protect you and cut them off. And that's how it's progressed. Life in a wheelchair has changed so much. I mean, I make a real big point of, at first I learned to wheelie my chair. Now I've got my own. This is a custom build, this one. This is like my forever chair, if you like. But as soon as I had my own, this feels like an extension of my body. It doesn't feel like I'm sat in a chair. That's the difference between my past wheelchairs and this one. And I learned to wheelie, not to show off, but to be able to pop curbs.
Okay.
Because not everybody's got a drop curb, but I wasn't letting that stop me. So I learned how to wheelie. It's changed life so much because everything has to be planned. Can't just jump on a train and go somewhere. You know, can't just jump in a car and drive. My car's been adapted, so I drive with my hands. So I can't now drive friends' cars or my parents' cars or whatever because I can only drive my own. A lot of people see disabled bays and think it must be accessible, but not all places are, because you look at the disabled bay, there might not be a drop curb around it. And that happens quite a lot. You might see a disabled toilet and think, oh, accessible, but then the aisles are too narrow and you can't get your chair through. There's so many things in life that make life inaccessible, and that's been a really hard thing to mentally get my head around. The way people treat you is so different. I've had people talk to my partner instead of me because she's standing and I'm not. It's got to have been difficult for her as well. I mean, Donna's my life. She's the reason I got clean. It was her that made me change my life and helped me change my life. And she's the living, breathing thing that keeps me clean and keeps me away from substance abuse. But I used to walk down the street holding hands with her. Now I'm pushing my push rims and, you know, so it does change a lot of stuff for her as well. It changes the relationship. It changes everything about your dynamics of everything, because everything has to be planned around accessibility. And people do treat you differently. I don't have any handles on my wheelchair. When I had it made, I said, what handles do you want? A folding? I said, I want ones that will come off. So I've got screw-in handles. I only ever have my handles on my wheelchair if we're doing something like Tough Mudder or an event where I need to be pushed. Because I was in a supermarket and someone came behind me, grabbed my wheelchair and pushed me out of the way to get past. No excuse me, no nothing. It really scared me because I started moving. I didn't know who was behind me. Someone really did
That is...
Yeah.
Yeah, you beggars belief. I wouldn't dream of it. I don't think no sane person would dream of it, to be honest.
People do. People see you as an inconvenience. And I get really dirty looks sometimes when I pull on a disabled bay off some people because I think you look too young or whatever. Now, there's my blue badge. And when they see the chair out, you see that you can physically see their facial reactions change.
Yeah.
Oh, that person is in a wheelchair. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Because I guess disabled bays and accessible things get abused so much that there's too many assumptions. The amount of people I've embarrassed is amazing. Been to the theatre and I was waiting for an accessible toilet. There's 2 toilets that are accessible. The theatre we were at. But they don't have radar locks on. And I'm sat there and my partner's with me just waiting for someone to come out. And 2 young girls came out drinking, looked at me and their faces changed. You've never seen them so embarrassed in their lives. They've used the disabled toilet because they couldn't be bothered to queue and because it's bigger so they can both use it, go in together. And to come out and someone be waiting in a wheelchair was just classic. They would never do that again. But there's something around the dignity in it as well, in that the facilities do get abused and I need a wider bay because if I can't get my door all the way open, I can't get my chair next to the door to transfer. If there's one accessible toilet, then I need that because I need a grab rail to transfer. I need that extra space to get my chair next to the toilet. It's not there for you to abuse. People just do flippantly. And mentally, it's really hard already switching to accessibility. But then when people abuse the accessibility, that makes things really difficult. And the stigma behind wheelchairs, the assumption is you can't walk for a lot of people. And if my legs, if I'm having a good day and maybe I can walk for 10 minutes or 5 minutes till I drop or however long I work for, then scrape myself up again, their heads go straight to fraud. Like, you don't need that chair. Is it for benefit? Well, no, it's not. It's because I need it. I would never choose this life. I don't think many people would. And it's been a really tough flipping life. I've done some pretty crazy stuff that's helped me accept it. Like doing my first Tough Mudder last year. That helped me accept myself so much because if I can get through a Tough Mudder in my chair, then I can do anything.
That's incredible. We said we're going to do a Tough Mudder this year. I've never done a Tough Mudder before, but to do it in a chat, actually, to be on that topic, we're actually hosting the Recovery Walk this year. Do you know, it's a national event. Celebrating recovery from drug and alcohol this year. This year is its 15 outing and comes to Hull for the first time. And I suppose the focus of the UK Recovery Walk is a public education, an outreach campaign that communicates by offering living proof of the reality of long-term addiction and recovery. So we'd like to, first of all, formally invite you to the walk. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about participating in walks like this, including the Team Tick Tough Mudder and you rock climbing as well?
Well, abseiling.
Yeah, abseiling. Okay.
So later this year, I'm going abseiling.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about this then.
Well, so as a group of charities, nationally and locally, we've got TIC, which is us, TIC in Yorkshire. Then there's Tourette's Action, which is the national charity, Tourette Scotland, Tourette's, as I mentioned earlier. And we host things like TIC. We hold an annual symposium where all the charities come together and we educate teachers, medical professionals, public teachers. We get them all together and we give lived experience talks, sensory processing education, formal education. We do all sorts. Then we have a party and a charity night after. We bring the country together in a way to deliver something. It's incredible. Well, we do all different events and we all go to each other's events, if you like. And one of the ones later this year, TIC Fest, I've been told that there might be abseiling there. Well, there will be, as long as the venue's okay. And if it is, then I'm going. Me and my partner Donna, we're going. And they're going to stick me on the edge of a cliff, hoist my wheelchair to the bottom, and I'm going over the cliff to catch it up.
Brilliant.
Why not? I've done more since my legs have been poor than I have when I had my legs, because I don't think you appreciate what you've got until something happens to you. It's all right looking at someone going, oh, I feel for that person. But then when you live it, it changes everything. And there's so much I would do if someone said, right, we're going to fix your legs and you've got 48 hours. What are you going to do with them? There's so much I'd do. I'd go snowboarding. I'd go skiing. I'd get on a bike again, on 2 wheels upright. There's so many bits and pieces that I'd love to do. But now, even if I can use them for a bit, it's not safe to, because if they stop on me, I'm I'm screwed. So now I'm in the position I'm in. If I can do something, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tough Mudder last year, there was a team of 5 of us from Team Tick, and we teamed up with Tourette's Manchester, and we took on the Northwest 15k Tough Mudder. I managed 7 out of the 30 obstacles, which I didn't expect to be able to manage any of them.
Yeah.
15k is nearly 9.5 miles on mud and grass. With the mountain bike wheels on, the resistance is hell. I couldn't put... So between the 3 of them, they got me round, which, plus doing their own Tough Mudder, as a team, we got me round. This year's slightly different. This year, I have met a Tough Mudder ambassador who they've got round a Paralympian in a wheelchair 9 times, including Europe's toughest mudder. So there's a team of 10 to 12 of them come in to put ropes on my wheelchair and pull me around. They're going to put me in a rock climbing harness, and I can take on every single obstacle. That's a 35-foot climb. That's crawling underneath the barbed wire through mud. That's going underwater. That's you name a Tough Mudder obstacle there, I'm taking it on. The climb up the ladders, they're going to go up first and pull me on ropes so I can just use my arms. And they've got my weight, so I can still achieve it all. And the rest of it, they're going to pull me like my wheelchair, like I'm Santa in his sleigh, with 2 big ropes coming off my wheelchair.
I love the mental image that's just created. Yeah, but yeah.
So I'm taking. It's not easy, even though I'm sat down. I'm not walking 15k, but I can tell you from experience, when you're sat in a chair on rough terrain, the chair's shaking violently underneath you, like shaking around. It takes out your core muscles, holding yourself upright, and I'm doing everything with upper body, not with legs. So all the obstacles that everyone else has got 4 limbs for, I'm using 2 limbs. So it's still a hell of a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's become part of my life now with Tick is Tough Mudder every year because it keeps you going. It's inclusive.
I was about to say, I love that there is that element of inclusivity with it because, again, I don't think you'd have got that 10, 15 years ago.
Probably not.
No, to have that provision in place now, I think is incredible.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a wheelchair-friendly course.
No, of course not. No.
The people around
to
you
accommodate
make sure you get there.
Yeah. To still accommodate it is fantastic.
But I mean, Tick, as a community, the Tourette's community is possibly the most inclusive community I've ever come across, in that I'm always a different one somewhere. So when I go to LGBTQ plus groups, or I'm around LGBTQ plus people, I'm normally probably the only one with Tourette's. And I'm in the minority being in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
If I am around, say, an autism group or whatever it is, wherever I am, there's a difference. With the Tourette's community, there's quite a lot of LGBTQ plus in the Tourette's community anyway. But when I'm at Tick, I don't feel different. Yes, I'm trans, but I'm one of the girls in the office. I've got Tourette's, ticking is normal there anyway. Being in a wheelchair, I'm not treated any differently. In fact, I'm encouraged to do things. It's not, what about accessibility? Although when we go out, we have to ask those questions.
Of course, yeah.
There's no limits. It's Tick that say, let's do Tough Mudder and let's get you round. We will get you round. Most people would see a barrier and they would put a barrier up to say, whoa, you can't do that. You can't get over that wall. Tick are there, holding the ladder, saying we'll push you up.
Yeah,
that's the difference in mindset.
Yeah,
that's what's given me my life and keeps me going. Having the love and acceptance of my partner, keeping me going through everything, alongside a charity that not only support me but allow me to thrive and push me out there. Because you wouldn't think that a ticky person with my labels would be out there delivering training and such forth. Well, I am, and they're encouraging it. They're helping me thrive.
Yeah.
And that's so special. And that's why the Tourette's community as a whole is so tight. But Tough Mudder is going to be incredible because there's a team of 19 of us this year, plus the ambassadors joining us.
Yeah.
So, if you want to do Tough Mudder this year.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do it, aren't we? We're definitely going to do it. B, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. What I've got to finish on is just 10 questions that I ask all my guests.
Yeah.
I'm going to go straight into it. So my first question is, what is your favourite word?
It's a weird one. Help. Because help is the hardest thing to say. But help is also the thing that if you're strong enough to say will change your life.
I like that. Tell me your least favourite word.
There's so many. And I tick half of them. I'm really stuck on that one. That's a really tough question. There's so many.
Do you know what? I'm going to say we've got 8 more of these. Tell me something that excites you.
Opportunity. Achievable opportunity.
What doesn't excite you?
Barriers.
What sound or noise do you love?
I can't think of the word of it, but there's an instrument, kind of like chimes. The calming. They use it in therapy and stuff.
I can't.
Yeah.
Do you know what they're called? Is it just like wind chimes?
Yeah,
kind of like that.
Really
Yeah,
calming.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you hate?
Anything that squeaks, that triggers my tics.
Okay. What's your favourite curse word?
Believe it or not, I hate swearing.
Really?
My tics do enough of it for me. And
Okay.
if it wasn't for Tourette's, I swear very little in conversation. My favourite.
You don't have to answer that one if you don't.
I don't really have one.
No,
yeah, honestly,
that's fine,
because I hate swearing. Like, I don't hate it.
To be fair, yeah, that it's interesting. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Neurology.
Nice. What profession would you not like to do?
Solicitor for criminals.
Last one. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
That I did good.
I like that. B, thank you so much for coming on the Believe in People podcast. You've been absolutely
Thank you
wonderful.
for having me.
Thank you.
And if you enjoyed this episode of the Believe in People podcast, don't forget to check out our other episodes and hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. Our name is CGL Hull. That's CGLHULL. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon and Google Music. So please like and subscribe to receive regular updates. You can also search for Believe in People podcast on your favourite listening device, and if you could leave us a review, that will really help us with getting our message out there and rising up the daily podcast charts.